was born here and brought up here in England, and I had the opportunity of going home, and I studied fashion. Actually, I studied fine art first at Yaba College of Technology, and that was an amazing experience for me. And then when I came back to England, I studied fashion. I did a one-year course, which just opened me up to amazing possibilities of what it is to be a fashion designer. Then I went on to university to study education. But I combined every single skill and everything that I'd learned to becoming an educator, taking what I'd learned to teach. So I became an art teacher and a textile technology teacher. And that led me on to looking at all the possibilities of the things that I could make and I could do as a fashion designer. I didn't just want to be a fashion designer, a bespoke designer, but I wanted more than that, and that brought me onto the journey of upcycling. But one of the things that I have not mentioned is that when I first finished my fashion course, I had the opportunity of working with a wedding shop. And I used to make all their bespoke bridals and christening garments. And that always gave me that taste for becoming an entrepreneur. So after working as a teacher for 21 years, I decided that it was time for me to start my own business. And I realized that the only way I could do that was stop working as a teacher, but still not losing the skills. So I could still work as a teacher, but in another format, by teaching children and adults how to sew. I want to get this huge campaign out there, that the Sew London project. We're not just called the Sew London project, we want to get the whole of London sewing. We want those skills in schools, we want skills in homes, so that basic things like sewing on a button will not be difficult. You know, a lot of the children of this particular generation don't know how to mend clothes. So if I can pass those skills on and educate people how to do that, then my journey has been worthwhile as a fashion designer stroke educator. When you take any object or garment or fabric and repurpose its life and change the course of that object or garment into something else. So in my case, it's textiles, because that's my forte, that's my area of specialism. So I would take something like an old coat and repurpose it into a bag, or I would take a pair of old jeans and repurpose it into a top, or I might take an old blanket and turn it into a dress, because I can see beyond the damage, I can see beyond the use of its former life and repurpose it into something new. And that's what upcycling is. It's not just with textiles, but because textiles is my area of specialism, that's what I'm very passionate about. Upcycling could be anything. You could take a bottle and it could be broken down, reprocessed into different type of fiber for garments, which they actually are doing at the moment. They're taking plastic bottles and turning it into fabric. So upcycling is quite vast, but the main sole purpose is to repurpose the original product into giving it a new lease of life. There are challenges, but I think it's all about educating people. So I have quite a few sources where I get my source of upcycled garments from. So I can pick things up from a charity shop. I can ask friends and family to donate, and to be honest, they because they're not sewers or sewists, they would go, oh, I know you'd find some use for this, I thought I'd give that to you. It could even be old jewelry. I'd think, okay, you know what, I could turn that into buttons on a garment. So it's not as bad as it seems. It's quite exciting actually, because you never know what you get the next day. It's a bit like a mixed bag, and people drop things off. And because they know that that's where my passion is, I get people calling me and saying, no, I've got scrap material, do you want to come and pick it up? So I never really say no, because it's an opportunity. Anything that I don't use, I donate to primary schools or organizations that I know might have good use for the fabric that I upcycle. You've got to equip people to learn how to sew first before they see the potential of upcycling. So a lot of times it's educating them and giving them those skills, and then they come back and they go, I can upcycle my old wrapper, or I could upcycle my bed sheets, I could upcycle my son's trousers or my daughter's jacket into something new, or I could slim down a garment. It's not always, upcycling could even just be repairs too, because it might be an old dress and you've lost weight and you think, well, I can't wear this now, when you can cut it up or completely change the style of that same one garment into something else. So it's quite exciting, really. The final outcomes are unbelievable in terms of the rewards. The final outcome of a garment is very rewarding. There's no limitations actually for me as such, because now that I'm not confined, I think there's certain rules and regulations as a teacher within a school. There's only that far you can go. And I remember towards my last years, I became dissatisfied because there were things I wanted to do, and there was so much protocol, you couldn't do that, and this age that you're working with, you can't do this, you can't do that. And there was so much more I wanted to do. And now that I work for myself, I'm working with adults and children, and there's so many more exciting things I can do. So for example, in secondary school, I had to stick to the school curriculum. So my creativity, I could expand it, but within the confines of the school curriculum. Whereby now, when I run children's workshops, I look to things that they can make for themselves, and how do you problem solve that? So during the summer, I ran a workshop in the library, Barking Learning Centre, and I wanted to teach children how to sew a button. So I created a kind of workshop where children made handbag charms. And to decorate their handbag charms, they had to sew a couple of buttons onto the handbag charms. Now, unbeknown to them, they learned the skill on how to sew a missing button, which is what I told them at the end of the day. That was my goal, that was my aim, and I fulfilled that. Now, the same thing goes for adults. When I run workshops with them, I want them to learn how to upcycle. So I might ask them to bring in an old piece of fabric or a blanket or a curtain that is, the fibers are still good. And I might say, we're going to turn this into a circular skirt. So the scope for me working by myself now is, it can go just right out of can skyrocket out of the roof, because there's nothing limiting me to how I run my lessons now. Whereby when I was in school, I was confined to the school curriculum, which was a bit stifling. But now it's much more easier because I can design my own lessons and plan my own schemes of work. So it's a bit of a journey, and I'm going to start from the 1960s, 70s, when England was known as an amazing industrial country, and we had loads of factories we were manufacturing in-house, and there was this kite mark. Made in Britain was always the kite mark to go for. And I remember even as a child, we heard of people coming visiting, and they came because of the brand and the quality that the UK always had in terms of their manufacturing process. And in the 80s and 90s, I started to see factories outsource the manufacturing and production process abroad. And in the process of that happening, we had a loss of skills. And in one area, it has been the textile and apparel industry, where we've lost those skills completely. And the legacy I want to leave behind is not just bringing back sewing, making it commonplace. Knitting hasn't gone anywhere, but sewing has. And that skill is what I want to revive, bring back to the UK, and use the vehicle, the Sew London project, to achieve that. But also to get people upskilled back with those skills, the sewing skill, and start the manufacturing process again back in the UK. The legacy I'd like to leave is to be able to train proper skilled sewing operatives back into industry. We're bringing it back into the UK. We're getting more people manufacturing textiles now. They're beginning to realize that even though they're outsourcing, some of the ethical practices abroad are just not acceptable, where you get child labor and you're getting people work long hours on unbelievably bad conditions. So a lot of the big manufacturers are beginning to realize that we need to start manufacturing back in the UK, where things can be monitored and there's standardization. And I want to be that person, or one of those people, who's recognized that there's a loss of skills within sewing within the UK, and basically train machine operatives so that we can get people into work through sewing. I run the Sew London project from this amazing Victorian building on Abbey Road in Barking, and it's a kind of creative quarters for artists and fashion designers and quirky people. So we've got quite amazing creative eclectic mix within this building here, and I run my sewing workshops from here on Abbey Road. And basically I've got really amazing space where I teach. I can do my private lessons here, but a lot of times I either work outside of the studio. So I was commissioned by Barking Learning Centre to run some sewing workshops for children this year. We did two workshops actually for the Black History Month, and during the summer I ran a couple of children's activities within the library in Barking. I also work with another organisation called Everyone Every Day, Participatory City, and they also commissioned me to run some regular sewing workshops. Again, that is an amazing way to meet the community and just meet people who drop in, and they come in and we problem solve their sewing and problems that they have, and I teach them how to basically learn how to work on a sewing machine, because some of them are just complete beginners. They've never used a sewing machine before. So when they do come into these drop-in sessions, I teach them how to use a sewing machine. One of the projects that I'm working on that I've already started, I'm in the process of setting up a social enterprise. And the social enterprise basically is teaching adults and young people who can work the skills of sewing, so they become sewing operatives back into the industry. And it's going to be quite an eclectic mix of people. People who are at risk of being out of school, who might not necessarily go down the apprenticeship route, can come to me and I can teach them how to sew. Again, they will hopefully find employment within the textile and apparel industry. And that is the vision for the Sew London CIC, that we train as many people as possible back into work as sewing machine operatives, and also fashion skills too will be included in the new year on how to become fashion designers too. So we've got quite a lot in the pipeline. I had the opportunity of working with special needs adults and children, and as a secondary school teacher, I had students that did have certain challenges, and sewing skills is an amazing way. It's very therapeutic. Art and sewing, it is a very therapeutic form of relaxation, and a lot of times when people do learn how to sew, they never want to leave. So even when you say, well, your time's up, they go, can I just do a little bit more? So it's quite therapeutic. So that is something that we will be looking into in the future. But I must say, I already have started doing that anyway, even through my workshops. That I've worked with quite a wide spectrum of people who have various challenges. So definitely that is an area that I am embracing and will definitely be doing. One of the areas that we're looking at is to work with low-risk ex-offenders to get them skills within the textile and apparel industry as machinists. And that will probably be training on site, but not within my studio. So that will be outsourced, and we'll be sending people in to train them. So that is something that we will be doing also. My legacy will be that the Sew London project is not limited to a geographical location, that we reach beyond the borders of London. We want to go national, we want to go international eventually. But my legacy will be that industry that we almost lost and the skills that we lost, I would be known as one of the people who brought that revival back, and that I will be known as a centre of excellence for training people, highly skilled machinists, to go back into work within the textile apparel manufacturing industry, and that I was the one who created that opportunity for people to do that through my excellent training through the Sew London project. Follow me on my blog/website as imsewlondon.wordpress.com, on Instagram as Sew London Project, and on Twitter as Sew London Project @Design to Create.